Hi everyone, it's your book coach Liisa Kovala here. Grab a cup of coffee and settle in for a discussion about all things writerly. I'm the author of Sister's Winter War and Surviving Studhof, my father's memoirs behind the death cave, and I'm an author accelerator, certified fiction, and memoir book coach. As a Finnish Canadian, I also love my coffee. In this podcast, we'll take a coffee break together to chat with authors, publishers, book coaches, marketers, agents, publicists, booksellers, and many others. Welcome to Women Writing. So happy you could join us for a coffee and a chat. In this episode of Women Writing, we're chatting with author and River Street publicist Hollay Ghadery. Hi, Hollay. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm so happy you could join us today. We met in person for the first time at Woodstock Literary Festival this fall, which was lovely, but we've been back and forth for quite a long time because you're with River Street Writing and you're a publicist. So you send me lovely people, lovely authors who are doing that great work of writing, and I feature them in Women Writing all the time. So thank you for all the recommendations over the last, I don't know, year or so.
Well, yeah, thank you for amplifying them. I mean, it's up to the community, right? To do
Yeah.
work.
Absolutely. It's really hard to, as a writer, to get your name out there, to get your books visible. And so if anything we can do to help each other, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you are a writer as well. You're not just a publicist, you're a writer, you're a poet, you're a memoirist, you're a short story writer, and you have a novel coming out. So
Yeah.
do you want to tell us a little bit about, like, your most recent one is Widow Fantasies, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Absolutely. So Widow Fantasies is a collection of super short fiction. I mean, I could say flash fiction, but not all of it would fall under the flash category necessarily, and none of it's microfiction, I don't think. But it's short fiction, and it explores the way women use fantasies and the act of fantasizing, or even the act of telling stories about ourselves and our lives to subvert the expectations placed on us by each other, by society, by men, by tradition, all that stuff. So it was fun to write. It's like 33 stories, but it's under 100 pages. So
great. I just love the title too. It just starts getting you thinking about, okay, where are we headed here? Awesome. And I feel like there's, just the way you described it, there is sort of some thematic connections to your memoir, for instance, your poetry.
Yeah. I'd like to say I have this like wide range of what I write about, but I'm always drawn back to the same things.
Yes.
Being a woman, feminism, but all the ways in which you can be a woman, all the ways you can be a feminist. And I mean, I don't think this is like beating anybody over the head with a political agenda or anything like that. It's just living, and a lot of stories take place in rural areas. What did I think it was Nancy Jo Cullen called it domestic rural Gothic, and I thought
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, pretty Gothic, and I mean, I love Catholic literature, so I guess somehow it's snuck in there, even though I don't think of myself as a particularly Gothic person, but I probably am.
Oh, that's so funny. And you're writing from your own experiences, and you're writing from things you've observed, and over time things change and relationships change, and it's just interesting to think about all the ways we walk in the world, right? Like it's a challenge in a way that other, like, for instance, my husband, I have to explain things to him, how, I can't just go for a walk down the street. Like, I have to kind of be super aware. We just kind of face different issues and challenges than maybe folks like he has to. They all have their own issues, I suppose.
We do, but I mean, even I was going to the AWP last year, or it was this year. I'm already thinking it's 2025, but I was going to the AWP, and I was saying to my husband I had to switch to a slightly more expensive flight because I didn't want to land in Kansas City in the middle of the night by myself. Like, well, what does it matter? And I'm like, dude, I'm traveling a lot. I don't land in a city where I don't know anyone.
Yes.
And
exactly.
deal with transportation to a hotel. Like I have no concept of geography or anything.
No.
No, I'll go during the day. Thanks. When
Yeah.
it's
And Fuse was the memoir. Is that right? Right? Fuse was
right.
your. Can you tell us more detail about what Fuse? What did you really explore there?
It's a memoir of mixed race mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's explored in meditations surrounding that very large encompassing
Yeah.
theme. So it started with a therapist telling me, it was probably like 20 years ago now, that there's a documented prevalence of eating disorders in biracial women. And I was seeing the therapist at an outpatient clinic at Kingston Hospital because my eating disorder and my self-harm were out of control.
Right.
And my boyfriend at the time told me that, I had to get help.
Yeah.
He was gone, which is kind of a toxic thing to say, but at the time I didn't clock that. I
Yeah.
just thought it was him, so I have to get help, right?
Right.
So I went for like one session and never went back. But that one
Right.
piece of information that she gave me, the therapist gave me, really stuck
Yeah.
with me. And eventually, not then, but eventually it became the kind of catalyst of what would become Fuse.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing, right? It takes that one moment or that one statement or that one instant that really, you're not ready until you're ready. But when you are, that's still kind of lingering in the back of your mind. And then, something she said must have resonated in such a way that, were you shocked by her, or was it kind of like, oh no, that's not me?
No, I was also so hungover, like
Right.
so hungover. Like in this one of the essays in the book where I talk about her telling me this, I just did not want to be there.
Right.
I was like, the book's also about addiction, so of course I was hungover.
Yes, yeah.
And it deals with a lot of things, but
Yeah.
I wasn't. She said that, and I was just like, okay, like it something clicked, something sparked, but I was also like, I'm dealing with enough.
Yeah.
If someone says to me now, when they're dealing with me on the everyday, that, oh, you ever thought that you might have ADHD? I'm like, listen,
Yeah.
I already know I have OCD. I'm still living disordered eating.
Yeah.
Addict who's 8 years.
Let me give you a list.
Yeah.
Right.
Anxiety. I
Read
have
the book.
I am not ready for one more label.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough.
Want it? Absolutely not. So I'm 43. I think labels are a bit like training wheels. Like for me, everybody's different.
Sure.
But for me, like labeling myself was very useful when I was younger, and I needed to like position myself in my identity. But now I find that labels are more oppressive than anything else, and I prefer not to use them. Like I can remember when I first signed up for Instagram, I was like Iranian, Canadian, and had both flags up and stuff like that. But then I feel weird about putting up the current regime's flag, and I started to feel weird about the Canadian flag because Canada is up to not up to no.
I know, but that has changed the way we look at things too, right? For sure.
I'm privileged to live here.
Yeah.
I'm glad to live here, but of course Canada is certainly not without its faults, and it's dark. So I was like, do I really want to define myself by these identities, which are sure part of me? They are, but I don't want to define myself by them and put these, like, I don't want these to be hills I die on, right?
100%.
And I started to kind of move away. I think right now Instagram bio says something like writes mothers neurodiverges. So these describe things I do, not things that I am, because who I am constantly changing.
Yeah.
As
they do, as you grow and change and learn and new experiences in your life. I found that interesting what you're saying about the labels, because you're seeing that a lot right now, but I'm finding, like, I'm in my early 50s and my mother-in-law is in her 70s, and even now people are kind of identifying or thinking, well, you might have, and I think she's thinking, oh, it kind of explains a lot of things about my life. So kind of taking that label is almost a comfort, because it's, oh, that explains why I behave in this way. But also at some point, like you say, you can let go of that and just be,
Hmm.
right? So it
Yeah,
kind of depends on the stage and where you are in that process. And
of course. That's why I said they're like training wheels. Like I needed them.
yeah,
Like I absolutely needed them to get to where I am. And I'm not categorically anti-label. I mean,
yeah,
people can do what they want to do. I am not here to tell
there,
people how to live their lives or how to define themselves. I'm simply speaking for
yes,
people could label themselves their whole lives, and that's fine.
right,
Like
100%.
want to do if it works for you, it works for
Yeah,
you. I for me, I start to feel really suffocated
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
by
yeah.
stuff. It's I have 4 kids
That's
and
a part and not the whole, right?
yeah,
That's yeah, for sure.
I have 4 kids, but I'm not only a mother.
That's right.
Like there's other parts of me too, and I certainly don't want to be defined as ever just one thing.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing.
Mhm.
And can you tell us a little bit about Rebellion Box? I was privileged enough to hear you read at Wordstock Literary Festival, and that was wonderful. Rebellion Box, is there something you're exploring in particular there? Sorry, that's my phone that I did. I'm sorry. Here
It's
I
okay.
go. I'm going to just, this is real life, right?
Yeah,
Things beep at us all day.
it'll make me feel better when one of my animals mauls me when they see him on the
Oh,
floor.
yeah. 100% my dog is going to bark in a little while, just saying. I mean,
I
so.
was I've been in 3 different places before we started this interview. Was my SI joint dysfunction is acting
No,
up?
no,
Y'all,
this is not what we call a polished Hollywood podcast. This is us just hanging out.
perfect. So rebellion box is right on theme with what we were discussing, and
Yeah.
that's the idea of feeling like you're stuck in a box, but you don't want to be there, that you're trying to escape. But it also deals with very existential questions because existence is a box, right? Like there's one way in, one way out, and we all have to all have
It's
the
gonna
same way.
happen.
My specific kind of obsessive compulsive disorder is something called existential OCD, and existential OCD is fixated in a very unhealthy, not philosophical necessarily, just an unhealthy obsession with and ruminating about ideas of existence and mortality and time.
Right.
Um, so when I was an addict, for instance, I drank to stop being scared all
Hmm.
the there's words that I won't even use, or if I use them by mistake. And then when I'm done talking to someone, I have to perform a set of rituals to feel better about myself
Right.
and to feel like everything's going to be okay and that I haven't just called on something I'm trying to avoid by using certain words.
Right.
So again, it's not like philosophical sitting there gazing up at the stars thinking, what are we? It's like
Yeah.
bowel quickening fear
Yeah.
and repetitive thoughts around the chaos and
Yeah.
meaninglessness of everything. Um,
Absolutely.
is it meaningless and what happens to
Mhm.
us all, so it's very scary. I'm medicated now so I can talk a little bit about it, but I started having this particular kind of OCD and not having it. I was born with it, but I
Mm.
started to really notice it when I was very young, like 5.
Yeah.
And then it just gradually got worse and worse and worse and worse. So for Rebellion Box, it deals with stuff like that, like on things on a cosmic level, but it also deals with talking about other people and histories, like our shared and collective and local histories. Like I talk about very hyper local uh, history and explore our relationship to each other and our relationship to the systems that confine us
Mm.
within local histories, and focusing on like Rebellion Boxes, a poem that won the New Quarterly's occasional verse contest, and it's a sestina, and it's told from the perspective of Joseph Gould, who was the founder or one of the founders of Uxbridge, Ontario,
Okay.
and his involvement. He was a pacifist and a Quaker, and his involvement in the war of the rebellion of 1837.
Mm.
Um, Now, what do I, a not straight Iranian woman, have in common with this long dead white dude? Well, actually, a lot. And I think that we have more in common with each other than we do with the systems that oppress us. No matter how different our politics may be, and I think this idea of division is a very useful and powerful political and capitalistic tactic to keep us fighting amongst ourselves. But I mean, I think that we,
Yeah.
society, really need to move past it.
Yeah.
And
Well, and we've seen that in that most recent election. And I mean, I don't know how we're ever going to move forward here. It seems
yeah,
like until people recognize that there are more similarities and there are more things to unite us than there are to divide us. But people want to keep those divisions healthily, going along, and just, I don't know. It's kind of a scary moment in history.
And I believe that our collective, the world's collective reading comprehension, which is tanking, and our literacy tanking, is actually at one of the roots of what's going on. Like we actually can't understand each other.
Yeah.
Anymore. The ability to hear something said to you or to read something and then correctly interpret what has been presented to you. It's just like not.
And there's so many studies that show that when you believe one thing, you really double down on that belief instead of being able to confront somebody else's point of view or take it on or even consider it. You're just nope. And then you just look for reasons to amplify your own argument. Yeah, it's just it's a frustrating thing. I wanted to ask you about if you were such a young child when you were starting to have those experiences, did you find writing was a way for you to kind of deal with those issues or work through them? Like, what is it about writing? Is it some people say writing is therapeutic? Do you find that? Or
I find reading therapeutic.
Right. Yeah.
Writing can be therapeutic, but like I find like writing's also like very practical. Like you're sitting down there trying to convey something. So like I don't find it therapeutic insofar as like the work that therapy should do.
Right.
I don't believe cathartic in that way, shape, or form. I think that before you sit down and write, you should have done the work before that. Like that's not to say that I haven't had tiny breakthroughs writing and been like, wow, that's what this is.
Okay.
By the time I sit down to write something, I'm fairly sure what I'm going to say. It's not like, wow, I didn't realize I thought that at all.
Yeah.
But like I might have like an offshoot realization, but it's not really, no, reading. I read a lot as a kid, and that was my escape, which is how I got sober ultimately. I'm not saying just by reading, but I mean, I had a lot of sober capital. So, some people who are addicts have gone through their whole lives under horrible circumstances where they don't have any point in their life that they can look back on and be like, do you remember how you used to deal with this before you started using? Right. Some kids start using when they're very young. Some are, they're forced to start using and abused. But I actually had like years of my life where I wasn't using, and like I consider people up to like 19 still babies, right? So when I say my childhood, when I was a kid, I was certainly not using. When I was in my late teens, I definitely had started drinking a bit, but nothing problematic. But I've been introduced to the substances that would become problematic by the time I was in my later childhood. Right. I have a 14-year-old that's always like, I'm a man. I'm like, you're a baby. Yeah. Like, oh, you feel like a man, but you are a child still. And you're always gonna be my baby no matter what. But reading and having sober capital and understanding that I used to feel and see magic in the world despite feeling these ways is what helped me. Writing can certainly help me, but writing is also very much work. Like it's not this inspired magical process for me. If somebody else finds it that way, wonderful.
I'm but sure that anyone really does. And if they say that, I'm not sure that they're really telling the truth. I mean, you might feel a little bit of magical moments in the process, but
for the most part, it's a slog, right?
Yeah, it is. And just to sit down, to sit down to it. That's so hard. At least it is for me.
It is. This year, I think I've written maybe 3 poems. That's it. So when, because I've had like 3 books come out in, I think 4 years. And then I have 2 coming out. So one in 2026 and one in 2027. Yeah. There's this illusion of this incredible output. Whereas like I didn't start publishing. My first book wasn't published till I was in my late 30s. Yeah. And while I was using, I was gathering wool. Like but I wasn't like sitting down to like finish things. And then I'm 8 years sober. So once I got sober, I started to like finish things.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like follow through. So it's not, there's this illusion that I'm very prolific, but it's not. It's just,
Well, I think that listeners might disagree because in the last 8 years, I mean, imagine all these things that you have published and you have things coming out. And for a lot of people, they're working on that first book for, 20, 25 years. Especially the first one takes for some people years or decades, and then it might speed up. But, so I think that prolific, you might not feel that necessarily on a day-to-day basis, but from a little bit more distance, I think you're doing okay.
I'm back working on poetry. So like poetry is demanding, which I like. Like it's,
well, and one poem can take, I don't know, rounds and rounds and rounds of revision, right? Like it takes what it takes.
It does. And I'm not particularly, I mean, I'm not worried about it. I am, because I'm the poet laureate of the region in which I live. I am like forced. I'm obligated to write poetry. So that definitely helps.
You like a deadline? I love a deadline.
I work very well with deadlines.
Yes, it's good.
And I'm not a procrastinator. I get things done way in advance.
Yeah, I'm the same.
I can't have things weighing on me. It makes me banana. I just want them.
No, that's when my anxiety goes up, is if I'm like, there's too many things on the list. I just want, nope, just tackle them, because then I'm like, okay, this is fine.
Yeah, I can. No, it's definitely, yeah. I as long as things get done, I'm not judging other people at all.
No. It's just how it works.
Yeah. I definitely have to have things knocked off my list well before they're due.
Yeah, I'm the same, and I always have been. And I feel like I have friends who are, no, it can just like, they can just move the deadline, or they can do that, like, and they're just relaxed about it. And I'm like, oh, that gives me a little heart attack. So we just all work in different ways, which is great. We're all different.
If people move deadlines on me too much, like I can understand family emergencies coming up, but because of my day job, if I have people move deadlines on me, or if I, somebody's interested in working with me and I notice that things keep getting moved around too much, I do not engage. Like I'm like,
that's not going to work for you.
Yeah, I'm not talking about like, oh, my kid's sick, I can't. Of course, like, sure. I'm not talking about, or
life
like
happens.
Yeah, or like I'm sick, or I have such a bad sleep, I can't think straight right now. Of course, we've all been talking about when people are chronically
disorganized and can't meet deadlines, and
I can't.
Well, and it means that your work increases, because now you have to move things around for that person, or squeeze them in somewhere else. And I totally understand that. So on that note, River Street Writing, so your role is a publicist who's promoting authors. Can you tell us a little bit about what that role entails? I think that we kind of understand that what publicists do in a kind of a vague way, but the reality, we were speaking earlier about authors' expectations about what that can look like, and the reality of it, and timeframes.
Yeah, so publicity is, I usually think of it, at least as far as what we do, is anything that's media facing. And sometimes helping plan events too. It just depends on what publishers need help with, but we don't do sales or marketing, for instance. So getting your book into a bookstore, that's the sales and marketing team. Or that's the sales team. Marketing would be like buying ad space places. We don't do too much of that. There is overlap. There's, the Venn diagram.
Yes.
But, and, we definitely do help some places where needed, and places we wouldn't usually help. But generally speaking, if you think trade media, which would be like Publishers Weekly or Kirkus or literary magazines, or, book columns or CBC books, traditional media. So traditional media and trade media can have overlap, but like newspapers, magazines, radio, again, stuff like legacy media. And then there's paid media, which we do a very small amount of. For the most part, I don't endorse paid media because there's a lot of scammy stuff out there, but there are certain platforms that are reputable and absolutely worth it. And content is king. So in this day and age, we don't live, in 1930s New York, in the New Yorker era of excellence.
Why not?
Creating
romanticize that.
Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, that's where a lot of writers are stuck. But that's not, yeah. I mean, me too when I first started. So I'm
Right.
not, I've been there. Um, so we do stuff like creating our own content, doing certain paid opportunities where people create content and they have really great platforms, and then earned media as well. So uh, these are we pitch media, and get people, and we pitch reviewers and critics, and get people to engage with the book. But of course, it's very difficult because you know uh,
Yeah.
media is shrinking for the arts. Media spaces are shrinking for the arts, and or at least the media spaces we think we need are shrinking for the arts. The ones that
Right.
we've been taught matter are shrinking. There are so many more new media outlets, though. That's like what we're doing.
Yeah.
And, YouTube, BookTube, and Book Talk, and Bookstagram, and blogs. I mean, yes, it's shrinking in this one way, but like in other ways, it's
Mm-hmm.
not. So I always, when I first started doing this, we work primarily with small presses, and small press authors. And our mission is to help people find lasting and meaningful readerships. And a lot of readers aren't paying too much attention to lists that come out of traditional media. A lot of readers aren't reading literary criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Not all.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I'm a reader and I do.
Yeah.
And what that stuff doesn't matter. Of course it matters. It matters to the author. Those pull quotes can help
Mm-hmm.
get a reader's attention. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. It matters a lot, but I'm saying that it's not the only thing that matters.
Yes.
So like while those things may be shrinking and that sucks and I want that to change and I wish we had like full book sections in every single newspaper, and I will try my best to fight for a world where that becomes a reality again. I'm also saying that like we can also put our eggs in other baskets too, while we fight for the change that we want and while we move the change that we want. But that all starts with us as a community of writers, as a community of readers and art lovers. It starts with us celebrating art, not expecting other people to celebrate it for us.
Right.
Not, oh, we're just these artists and we shouldn't have to do anything ourselves. Yes, you do. It's so arrogant. Yeah. It is so arrogant to think you don't have to stand behind your own work.
Right.
Do it.
Yeah. As though that book will just magically find an audience and just become whatever the author dreams of. And I mean, I get it because as, especially when you're spending years working on a book and you're just in it to like learn the craft and you're trying to finish it. And then if it does get published or if you self-publish or whatever you're doing with it, that whole other aspect is it's a whole new education. Like it's a lot of work to learn how to write a book, but then to get it out there and promote it and do all the things. I think authors are really, really struggling with that. And I think River Street and others are just sort of leading the way in terms of where you can get these books recognized and where you can get readers interested in them. And I don't know, I just think it's yes, things are shrinking, but I also think there's so many interesting and new places that I would never have thought about. And now I'm like, oh, look at this and look at it's just incredible, actually, the kind of resources available to us that I'm sure, let's talk about the 1930s, that just didn't exist, right? We couldn't just decide to make a podcast, or we couldn't just decide to do a newsletter and reach all these people with our book information, So I mean, it's pretty incredible what we can do. It's just such a learning curve.
It's a learning curve. It's understanding that not every new media opportunity is going to be worth it. Not everyone's a great podcast host. Not everyone understands pacing with newsletters. Some people just spam you and you're like, unsubscribe.
Yes. That's too much.
Not every, there's, it's not just because anyone can do it doesn't mean everyone should do it. And it doesn't mean that everyone is has that internal regulation needed to do it. And I think but you can learn, you can learn, but some people are just naturally better at these things than other people. And that's okay. We can't, I was talking to someone the other day about a horrific accident that happened. And, everyone was like, oh, the person who passed, it was like, oh, that's so tragic, left behind a family. And I was just like, who had to clean that up? It's
yeah.
I could focus on was the gore and the mess. And then I thought, thank God there's other kinds of people in the world because like,
Do
and I'm,
things for you.
yeah, for people look at books and say, thank God somebody else writes these because
Yeah.
it's okay to not all be good at the same thing, but you know, it's fine. But what I'm trying to encourage people to do is like, let go of elitist and
Mhm.
archaic notions of what we need to be successful as writers. Like I have published 3 books. Well, not I, somebody else has published 3 books for me. And I've never been on a CBC list. I've never been reviewed in the Globe and Mail. I've never been in the Toronto Star. I would still say I'm pretty successful. I have readerships. I have people who read one book and then go buy the book on my backlists and buy the other books I've published. Like, and I would love to be on a CBC list.
Sure.
I would love to be in the Toronto Star. I would love to be in the Globe and Mail. I'm not being disparaging towards these incredibly important and valid platforms. What I'm saying is if we, you know, only hang our hat on those, we are going to be disappointed everywhere else because there are so few people that can get them. So if we look to and celebrate the alternative media spaces, the new media spaces that are platforming authors really, really well and doing a job of it, and give them our support and give them our, you know, spare funding and dollars, and, you know, fund their patron sites and stuff like that. Like, let's do that. Like, it's fine. I mean, and that's not saying, you know, forget the other ones. Like I haven't been on a CBC list, but I think with every book except one, I've been on CBC radio, and you know, I've been supported definitely by these platforms, and the Toronto Star has been wonderful, and the Globe and Mail have been wonderful and supportive when I pitch my authors. I've got my authors in these, like,
Yeah.
might not be, but I'm ecstatic they are.
Absolutely.
It's not me. I'm certainly not poo-pooing them. It's just that I think we need to like rethink our notion of success. And we also need to rethink what we think about community. It doesn't have to be a full-time job, but we can complain and complain and complain that nobody's reviewing our books, that nobody's paying attention to us, that nobody's amplifying our work. It's like, well, what was the last thing you did for anybody's book? Like it's like, if you truly love this, if you truly love it and you're not in it for some like overblown egotistical reason, presumably you love the art, why aren't you celebrating it? Again, I understand I work in the industry, so for me it's very easy for me to have more time than maybe somebody who works outside of the industry and has another kind of job too. It's easier for me to celebrate it, but I also make a choice to celebrate.
100%.
It's
I
all
totally agree.
But I have spare hours. I'm a co-host of Howl on CIUT FM. That's a literary arts program. I mean, that takes my time. That takes my time away from my family and my kids to support all these authors. And it's not like every single one of them is a client of mine. Sometimes it's just a book I love that I want to talk about. I have authors on my series on my website, the Can Lit Crowd. We have people come and do website or blog series with us at River Street. And half of them might be our client, but half of them aren't. They're just doing things we admire.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
that community.
Yeah, that's time and labor I'm putting in for free, which is fine because, you know, I think this idea of, you know, pay for labor. For the most part, yes, pay for people's labor. You can't ask an author to read your whole manuscript and give their feedback for nothing unless they're a friend offer you, like unless they offer to, but even they offer to pay first. But as a community member, there are certain transactions that I believe don't have to have a currency, or at least a monetary currency attached to them. But it's also up to us, it's up to you, it's up to whoever to decide that currency. And it, you know, you have to respect each other and not expect it of anyone. And I think one of the biggest issues I see, I'm not just talking about writers or anything, but I'm talking about like people in general, is the sense of entitlement that, you know, I put this work in, therefore I am entitled to X, Y, and Z. It's like, that's such a capitalist notion.
No one owes us anything.
Nobody owes us anything. Community is so important. I think that our world is experiencing, you know, a spiritual dearth because nobody has a community anymore. You know, it's just, we have a huge housewarming party every year because we started to realize that nobody was doing them anymore.
Right. Yeah.
All the time when my partner and I were growing up, and we're like, well, you know, be the change you want to see. Like, I'm not going to host one every month, but like a housewarming, an open house. we're not moving that much. But
Wow.
yeah, housewarming every year. No,
but I like the idea of it being it's even the idea of a housewarming. I mean, I know we say it's a new house, but housewarming, it just feels like that's what it is when you gather a group of people together, and it's just that warm, glowy feeling you have because you're with people in real life. And we understand that that's so much more important now, even more so in the last 5 years. Like we just get it when we see people in person and spend time with them. And yes, the community we're building is mostly online. There are still in-person events, there are still book launches you can go to, there's other kinds of author events you can go to in real life and support other authors. But I think you're right, you have to make a choice to support those people because they're your people. Like that's your community. And we might not be next door neighbors, but we are, like, especially in Canada, it's pretty small community actually. Like when you start to talk to people, it's it doesn't take long before you kind of know not everybody, but quite a few people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's leading with integrity, like you don't have to kiss someone's butt just because you think they can do you a favor. I mean, lead with integrity. If you work like their work, it doesn't matter if they're well known or not. Yeah. If you don't like someone's work, that doesn't mean they're a terrible person. That certainly doesn't mean you need to go and, my general rule is don't say anything behind someone's back or in writing on social media or writing in a review or just don't say anything
agree.
Wouldn't say to their face. If you don't have the guts, like I constantly say that to, clients that you'll get on social media and do this rant. And I'm like, no, as your publicist.
Yeah. Don't do it.
Would you say that to their face? Yeah. Then don't say it on social media.
Yeah. If I don't really understand, negative, I get that everyone I always think about, we have those ideal readers and there's a market that likes our books, but our books are not for everyone. They just aren't, and they shouldn't be for everybody, right? It should just be this group of people who whatever it is about your work that they love, and those are who you're writing for. But if you don't love it and it's not for you, then go find something that you do love, but don't write negatively about it. I just don't understand.
And I do believe we need to have the courage of our convictions. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be voicing dissenting opinions. Sure. I'm not saying, of course we, but I mean, like, it's when people are going there and being terrible.
Yes.
People or being passive
or
petty and like you're passive aggressive petty. It's like, no, if you own what you want to say, if you want to say someone is a dill hole, say it to their face. Oh, fine, say it online. Make sure if they walked into a room, you'd say
you would have the courage to do that.
Yeah, don't be all brave behind your keyboard. Yes. Like be like, and that's why like social media is so important for book marketing, absolutely. But like so are real life events. Like it's everything. There's like a perfect storm of things that need to be happening. You need to be in print media, you need to be online media, you need to be in person doing things, you need to be in book clubs, you need to be doing readings, but not too many readings in the same city. You don't need to cannibalize your audience. There's so much that goes into it, and you see people like even on social media who just like spam people about their book constantly. It's like, no, social media is like a party. You walk in and you don't start talking about yourself.
I love that.
Not what you do. Like just give a crap about what other people are doing. Be a part of this community. And if you can't do that authentically, just don't. Yeah. Like don't be a part of it then, because you're exhausting otherwise. Or just come out and say whatever you want to say about your book when you want to say it, but you don't need to spam people with it. Yeah. I mean, if you want to spam people with it, that's fine, but probably not all people will follow you. You can do whatever you want. I'm talking about best practices, like best practices.
Of course, and that's what we love. Yeah,
for sure. And if you want to do that, that's fine. But like, not all people will follow you, and not a lot of people will find you in like sincere, because not everyone wants to hear about you all the time. Like I assume most of us got into writing because we loved reading. So let's talk about that. Like, let's talk about the books we love. Like I talk about Colette. I talk about Sal Ballo, who I know is problematic, but I love Henderson the Ranking. Like I talk about people who, by acknowledging how much I love them, it's not like Sal Ballo is going to come and give me kisses and like, or Colette or Daphne du Maurier is going to come and be like, oh, everybody read Hollay because she supported me. They're not anymore. I just talk about who we want to talk about.
Right. Yeah.
hear about it. And
Sure.
because I'm a publicist who works predominantly with small press Canadian books, that's what I tend to talk about these
Yeah,
days. That's
absolutely.
every now and then I'll like meet a reviewer, because I'm a member of the National Book Critics Circle, and they'll have a book coming out and I'll buy it from wherever they are. I love reading works in translation. I love reading other stuff too. It's just talk about what you love to talk about. And if it's not genuine, if you're doing it because you think you can get something for doing or that somebody will owe you, you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
I agree.
In return, just be a good community member. Don't
Yes.
vote.
Here,
You know,
here.
go do something else now and then. Like
That's right.
you don't burn yourself out for this. But as much as we complain, nobody's reviewing our books, nobody's supporting us, nobody's interviewing us, nobody's doing. Do it for someone else.
Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
yeah,
I
again,
love that. That's amazing. Totally agree. So I wanted to ask you also some questions that I asked Substack readers if there was anything they wanted to ask, and I had 3 great questions. This is from Marion. She wanted to know, and you mentioned this, Kirkus earlier, is it worth paying for Kirkus reviews after a novel has been in the world, but it didn't get reviewed at release? And she says, I've heard that libraries use them to gauge whether they buy books. So I think if a book has been out for, I don't know, a year or more, do you go back and do that, or do you just keep on moving ahead?
I mean, I wouldn't, but I mean, I really try to stay away from too many shoulds in my talk.
I know it's hard.
It's difficult to know. I mean, and yes, some libraries use them, some don't. Are you like there's no magic.
It might even be worth it to make that personal connection with your libraries. Walk in and say, you know what, I have a book, and sometimes that might bring you a little farther along to get it into libraries by just having that conversation or a phone call or whatever.
Yeah, I cannot undersell the importance of following up. Don't ever send one email and think that's it.
Yeah. People's
inboxes are insane. Follow up.
That's true.
You don't have to follow up like every day, but like every week.
Yeah, don't hound them, but
yeah. And there's a point where if you haven't heard anything back, stop. Yeah. Like usually that's around like the 4 or 5 follow-up.
Probably a no.
Yeah. Stop annoying them now. But offer new information with every follow-up. Because maybe you're just not saying the right thing yet, but don't write the essays, like people are busy, make everything short. But yeah, with Kirkus, I mean, I believe in paid media, and I believe Kirkus is a good place for paid media. If they're open to reviewing a book that long after it's been out, my thing is if you're planning to write more books, use it as a test, try it. Like see what happens when you do it, right? Like I generally don't do Kirkus paid. Like they either do it for free or I don't bother, but I have done paid media for other things before. So I mean we use Bookster sometimes, which is a massive platform, and they have like tons of followers, and that's really good for visibility, and that's paid media. I mean I would say if you have the funds, can't hurt to try.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, that's great.
If you're expecting it to sell books, probably not. But if you're doing it for the library reason,
maybe. Okay, that's good. Okay, this was another one from Substack. So again, one of these questions where not necessarily want to write a wrong answer, but where is the best place for an author to put limited marketing resources, time mostly, and maybe money in the between time? So between getting a book out and your next book isn't out yet, so that could be a year or 2 years, maybe longer between books. How might you stay present?
Put money. I would say social media, like meta ads, like boosting your posts, just to get more visibility. But if you're going to do that, make sure your post is like shit hot. Yeah. Like don't take a crappy screenshot, and don't have links in your captions on Instagram where no one can click the damn link. Right. Like, know how to use these platforms properly. If you're going to use them, like there's nothing that looks as unprofessional as a screenshot that doesn't fit the right parameters of an Instagram dimension. Right. Canvas is free, or Canva is free. you can use it to just like upload a photo into the correct parameters, it's
Yeah.
so there's also a paid one that you can use, create fancier graphics. I mean, if I can do it, anyone can do it because I am not graphically inclined.
And it's a great place to have fun. I don't know. Canva's a great place to distract yourself from writing. Like
Oh,
if you're like, I can't write today, but I can make things in Canva.
of my book. Yeah, like if you're on TikTok, boost a TikTok post. Like these are, yes, it's all social media. And like there may be times where like a local magazine or something has a bit of ad space you can buy. But I would have to know the exact local magazine, its circulation, its readership. Like I would need more details.
Yeah.
So everything is so hit and miss that way. But again, a really easy thing you can do is to keep yourself relevant is celebrate other people's work.
I love that. Yeah,
Don't,
I think that's the thing, right? You have all that time between books out. Yeah, be part of that community and grow it.
Mhm.
And the last one from Substack is oh, this I think we've kind of answered. It feels like writers are bombarded with possibilities they could do to raise visibility or even especially be of genuine service to the greater writer community. So we've kind of talked about that and how to pick. So I think one of the examples was, being on a board or being on a writers union or like what would be an effective use of time and your own resources to help out a writers community? I mean, again, a big question, and there's varied answers, I'm sure.
I think there's an easy answer. It's the same way you decide what you're going to write next or what projects you're going to work on. What are you passionate about? What can't you get out of your head? What are you obsessed with?
Yeah.
Do that. Whatever that is.
Yeah. Whatever that is, and just do it.
Awesome. If it's being a reader for a literary magazine, like one of the first readers that's an option. Lots of literary magazines need readers. If it's doing reviews on your Instagram page or doing reviews for a literary magazine, awesome. If it's like it's whatever you feel like you're gonna love the most, do it. Because there's a lot of stuff and not everything's for everyone. And that's okay. You don't have to be everything to everyone. That's not throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping it sticks is not the right approach.
Yeah. Do you feel like people should, I mean, this is the perfectionist in me speaking now. So I'm sort of a recovering perfectionist. So I tend to do things maybe before I'm ready. And because then I actually do them. Whereas if I wait until it's perfect, it's not happening. So do you advocate for one or the other, make sure it's perfect, or do you think just try things and see what happens?
I'd say again, if you're passionate about it, try it.
Yeah.
If you're like, oh, that sounds like my own personal version of hell, then don't. Like I was a fiction editor of Untethered for maybe a year, and I had to step down, not because I didn't love the people or love the magazine, and I was introduced to so many amazing writers through working there, and it was a privilege. But because I work in front of a screen all day, sitting down and writing and reading and editing and doing more correspondence, no, thank you. Like I couldn't do it anymore. I was suffering from like screen fatigue. I was seeing spots in front of my eyes at all times. I couldn't sleep at night just because it was just one more thing I had to do on a screen. Whereas I find being like on the board for the League of Canadian Poets, sure, we do Zoom meetings, but there's a lot of stuff that happens that's like not on screens or I'm the poet laureate of the region in which I live, and yes, there's a small honorarium, but it's largely volunteer, but I'm out in the community doing stuff. I'm like
real people.
Like that's what I that's what I want to do. So that's what I'm passionate about. That's something that's going to get me out. Reading through 50 submissions when I'm already spending the majority of my life in front of screens is not something that's going to entice me at this point in my life. That might change later on.
Of course. Yeah. No, all good words of wisdom, because I think we're all just sort of figuring it out. And if folks have done some of the things that you think you were saying, maybe not the best idea, that's okay. Just keep moving forward, right? Like we're all we're figuring it out, figuring out what works for us, figuring out what we are passionate about, in what ways we can show up for our community and build it. And I love the idea that if you don't have that kind of community, create one if you can in your own community, or join something online, whatever you need to do.
I
And
mean,
then your passion kind of rises, right? Because you're invigorated by everybody else.
again, like, yeah, there's no reason to have imposter syndrome. Every person in a position of power is just someone who kind of found themselves there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying they didn't work or they don't have knowledge or they don't know things that you don't know. I'm saying they're just people.
Yes,
You know,
just
like,
people.
they're
And
just
often nobody else wanted to do that job, so they volunteered. That happens more
absolutely
often than not.
exactly. And like, of course, they probably know things that
Yes.
we
Yeah.
don't know. They have knowledge that we don't know, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't know.
That's
Like
right. Yeah.
it's this thing about, again, I really shy away from elitist language or and that, or vanity, like any kind of vanity metric of gauging ourselves,
Yes.
where we, think something's going to be a good idea because it looks like a good idea and we thought it's a good idea, but it's like, is it a good idea? Like, I don't know.
Really?
I think
Maybe
the
not.
give people, like, the less power we have over our own lives and our own choices and ourselves. And I think that's a dangerous position to put ourselves in.
Yeah.
And it's demoralizing. Who wants
Yeah.
to feel powerless? I don't.
That's right. Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking this time with us today. I could talk to you all day long. Like, there are, like, between your lovely work and your work with as a publicist, and just everything. You're delightful, and I just really appreciate the time, and keep on sending your lovely authors my way. They're just so awesome.
Thank you you are a wonderful example of someone who's being the change, right? Like,
Thank you.
you're doing you. You're doing what makes you comfortable, what makes you happy, and you're doing it well. Like, that's exactly what I'm talking about. No, you don't have to try to be anyone else. If you stay in your lane, there's no traffic. Just do you and
And
your
you know what? It's fun, and I just love it. So you're right. If you follow your passion, I mean, whatever else happens everything else is out of our control,
it
right?
is.
All of that's out of our control. Let's just do things that make us happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Or admire and don't sell out.
That's
Like,
right. Yeah.
yeah.
It's easy. It's easy, guys.
Everyone can have all their dreams. Yeah.
Just like that. But we're works in progress.
We all
Thanks,
are.
Holly, and we'll chat again someday.
Absolutely.
Take care. I appreciate
Bye.
it. Bye for now. Do you have writing goals that you want to achieve in 2025? If you need support, encouragement, accountability, and community, join the Women Writing Circle. We meet bi-weekly to set writing goals and get pages done. Go to Women Writing on Substack and subscribe. Let's create a little magic this year. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to have a coffee break with us at Women Writing. Don't forget to subscribe to Women Writing on Substack. If you like this episode, share it with someone who needs a writing break and a little inspiration. Happy writing. Thank you to Michael Jensen for his original music and editing, and to Mia Jensen for the logo design.